Video lesson 2, compound interest. We're going to start off by recalling the definition of simple interest. That was video lesson 1. And what was special about that was that simple interest earns you interest only on the principal amount, which is the original amount that you invest. Compound interest earns interest on the interest, which means any previously earned interest that you've earned within the year, the following year, you will now get interest on the new amount. So let's take a look at a very similar table to the one we did in video lesson 1, but we're going to do it again using compound interest. So I'm going to use the same numbers. Our principal, if we look up here in the top right corner, our principal was $600 and the interest rate for that example was 7%. So if we fill in this table using compound interest, let's see how that affects the total accumulated amount at the end of the 5 years. So this is what we had last video. So principal was always 600. You know what? I think I should just move it, open it, and then you can see it, the whole thing. All right, here it is. So this was the table we had. It started off $600. We calculated the interest for 1 year, which was 600 times 0.07, 7% as a decimal. And then we added the principal to the interest to get our accumulated amount, which was 642. And so every year our principal remained 600, our interest remained 42, and you just pretty much made $42 every year, which we also saw that turned into a linear relationship if you graphed it. All right, so now let's take a look at what happens with compound interest. And of course, I lost my pen. So let me go get my pen. All right, so the principal is still 600. And the first year, we're going to calculate it as same thing, 600 times the interest for $42. And then A equals P plus I, so your accumulated amount is just 600 plus the interest, and so that gives us $642. So first year, simple interest, compound interest, exactly the same. Now here's where it changes. This 642 now becomes your principal for year 2, because now you're going to earn interest on the $42 of interest that you earned the previous year. So now to calculate interest, it's the 642 times the 7% rate for a total of $44.94. My new amount is going to be 642 plus the new interest rate for a total of 686.94. So you can already see it's a little bit more than the 684 at the end of year 2 for simple interest. The 686.94 becomes my new principal, because now I'm going to earn interest on that interest, and I get 686.94 times 7% for year 3 for a total of $48.09. You can see already that every year, because you're earning interest on more money, your interest is increasing. So 42, 44, 48, and then we add 686.94 to the interest for a total of 786.48. And these decimals are more than 2 decimal places, but I've made sure to round them accurately to 2 decimal places because it's money, and you should do the same. So this, oh, wait a second, I think I made a mistake. 48, yes, I did. I've written the wrong amount here. Pardon me, let me fix that. I'm ahead of myself. So this is 48.09 is 735.03. I went 1 year beyond on my little chart here that I'm reading the numbers off of. So this is 735.03. And then if I multiply 735.03 by 7% for the interest for that year, I get 51.45. And then if I add those two, I get 786.48. And I think you see the pattern now. I don't think I need to keep writing. Now the 786.48 is my new principal for year 5 Multiply 786.48 by 7% for an interest rate of $55.05. Add the principal to the interest for a total of $841.53. And so the total here, change colors, is $841.53, which is about $31 more than what you earned if you had invested your money simple interest. So in general, it is true, compound interest will always earn you more money than simple interest will. Here's our formula for compound interest. You need to memorize this formula. A equals P times 1 plus I to the n, and this should look familiar a little bit. You see the n in the exponent. Where have you seen that before? Exponential functions. So yes, compound interest is an exponential function. Here's what the letters mean. A is still accumulated amount. That's the total principal and interest. Principal, P, is still the amount that you invested in the beginning. Interest rate I, here it's going to get a little bit tricky, but for today's lesson it's going to stay quite simple. The percent of the amount that is earned or paid as interest based on the compounding period. Now with compound interest, you can get interest at different intervals within a year. For this lesson, we're going to do a compounding period, which is called compounding annually. And so for all of the examples or all our discussions, n is just going to be 1. And the next video lesson will discuss when n is not 1. However, I have included the values in here, so at least you've seen them once before. Here's your formula for I. I is going to be the rate. So rate is like the interest rate at the bank, like 6%, 4.4%, whatever it happens to be. You convert it to a decimal. And then you take that rate and you divide it by the number of compounding periods. So as I said, for today, our n, or our number of compounding periods, is just going to be 1. But next lesson, we're going to see how the amounts are affected and how the equation's affected if n is 2, if compounding periods changes to 2, 4, 12, 26, 52, or 365. And of course, what to look for in the question that will tell you to use those numbers. Next is time, which we're going to use n instead of t, because n is going to represent the number of periods, that number of times you get interest in a year. So time here is in years. Time is in years, just like in simple interest. And then you multiply that again by the number of compounding periods. So for today, our number of compounding periods is just 1. However, it could be 1, 2, 4, 12, 26, 52, or 365. Now, this is the equation that you will use to calculate your accumulated amount, this one here. However, if you want to know how much interest you got on the money over that certain amount of time, you would still use this general formula. This is the formula that just says however much you have at the end is just the amount you invested plus the amount of interest you earned on it. It doesn't matter what kind of interest you're talking about, or whether it's compound or simple. This is always the case, your initial amount plus your interest. So if we rearrange this formula, your total interest, I, is going to be the total amount you earn at the end of your investment minus the initial amount you invested. Please note, and this is in big, bold, red letters for a reason, the formula I equals PRT is only for simple interest. You do not use I equals PRT ever in any compound interest question. If you want to know how much interest you've earned, you're going to use this formula. You take the accumulated amount you calculated using the formula up here, and then you subtract the principal. So let's do an example. What is the accumulated amount if $500 is invested at 4.3% per annum, compounded annually? So the fact that it says annually says that the compounding period is 1 for 6 years. So let's take it one step at a time. Let's start with the formula. A equals P times 1 plus I to the n. I is your interest, which is your rate, divided by the number of, and I'm just going to use CP for compounding period, if that's okay. And so your rate is, as a decimal, 0.043. And because it's compounded annually, your number of compounding periods is just 1. So really, it's just 0.043, nothing changes. N is T in years times the number of compounding periods. How many years? 6. And the number of compounding periods is just 1 because, again, it's annually. And yes, the number here, get a little highlighter, this number and this number will always be the same. So whatever you divide in I, you will also use that same number and multiply to get N. These two numbers will never be different, always be the same. Okay? And then we get 6 for N. So now we have everything we need to plug into our formula. Accumulated amount is going to be 500 times 500 is your principal. That's how much you invested. 1 plus 0.043 and to the power of 6. And you can enter it like this in your calculator, or if you feel that you would rather add these two together first, you can do that. And then put it all into your calculator. Just make sure you put it all in. Your calculator should do BEDMAS, and it will do the exponent part first and then multiply by the 500. And the answer there is $643.69. So therefore, the accumulated amount is $643.69. And no, if you're thinking I did not have to put the dollar sign here, I could have just waited and done the dollar sign in the sentence. I could have just left it without. Now, how much interest is earned? So that's this formula, not I equals PRT, right? That's for simple interest.
Ms. Cook, please call
And there is an announcement.
Ms. Cook, extension 403.
All right, I'm just going to keep going. And the accumulated amount is $643.69 minus the principal, which now is 500, for a total of $143.69. So that's how much interest you earned on your $500 over the 6 years that the money was invested. So therefore, the interest earned was $143.69. And that's it. Tomorrow we'll follow this up with the graphs as well as another example. So be prepared for your quiz. I'm just looking for my, oh, there it is. And there's your homework. Have a good night.